Greetings LEGO and D&D nerds, my name is Ian and I have a package from eBay. Now show of hands, how many of you remember LEGO Heroica? If this is a theme you haven't heard of, then let me fill you in. Way back in 2011, LEGO decided they made board games now. It's when we saw the creation of this D6 piece with studs to attach tiles to make custom dice depending on the game you were playing, and it's also featured here as the logo of the line. I had a couple of these games. Minotaurus was a fun one that I played a lot with my friends. The Minotaur chased your little guys around the maze. Creationary is just Pictionary but with Legos, and I could never get anybody to play this one with me. But the one that I never had was Heroica. It was sort of this like white whale to me. It seemed so cool and intriguing, but I never bought it for some reason. I don't know if I was intimidated by it or what, but just the existence of it inspired some builds that I made, kind of maybe set me on this path towards LEGO D&D. And so I found the copy of the 4-can map and decided I should pick it up to talk about in this video. And I promise this does all tie back into Dungeons & Dragons, just hear me out for a minute. So let's take a look inside this box at what we have here. Heroica was sort of this cross between a regular board game and an RPG. It had these like modular little sections of map, and it encouraged you to build your own versions and play with the Heroica rules on your own map. Here we've got a little drawbridge, a forest with a fountain. This room here has a little writing desk in it. So here's all of my map segments. Part of the pitch of this game is that it's modular and you can kind of put these together however you want. So the LEGO instructions show you how to build all of these individually, and as you can see on the box art, they have them assembled a certain way, but you can kind of connect them however you want. We have these sort of just hallway connector pieces, and then these like larger rooms. It doesn't necessarily matter how we join them together. Here I've assembled something akin to what they built on the box, and I had 2 hallway segments left over that I could use to join these up in a different fashion. And besides the map, the game also comes with several other pieces. We have these little guys here. These are micro figures, and these are your Heroica game piece. These guys move across the game board on these 2x2 jumper pieces. These are your game spaces, and you move along them by rolling this LEGO dice. We also have a smattering of bad guys. For this particular version of Heroica, which is 4-can, the bad guys are a bunch of goblins, but there were other sets which featured other maps and other micro figures. And as you explore the map, you have to fight the enemies in order to move forward. And there's also a mechanic using these LEGO keys, which you're supposed to disperse throughout the map, and everywhere that there is a doorway, you have to have a key to be able to open it. And there were also these little potions here for like healing and I think strength and other things. The way the game worked was kind of cool. You had just this 1d6, but it has these split faces. So if you're rolling to move, you take the number, and then this fancy one was like move 4. But if you're rolling to fight one of the enemies, then you're using the skull and sword token. If it's the sword, then you hit it for however much, and if it's the skull, then it hits you for however much. This one was a combination of both. The heroes and the monsters have these little special abilities and stats in the rulebook here, and you got these little cards to track your character's progress. These are your hit points, so you can like take these off as you get hit, and these open studs at the top were for collecting items that you might have, like a key or a potion or one of these special weapons. These were my favorite part about Heroica, and I do have another set of these, but I don't know how I got it, because like I said, I don't have any other Heroica kit. So I'm not sure how I ended up with a set of these, but I love them so much. They were really interesting molds. There's this little axe and this sword that is kind of a dagger at minifig scale, these 2 standard daggers, and then we have these 2 wands and this little bow. And I think you could scatter these in the map, or there might be other mechanics to collect them throughout the game, and you can add them to your card. There's also this special little helmet here that has its own stats, and it fits nicely onto one of these guys' heads. But it's too small for a regular minifig head, which is kind of a bummer. And so that's kind of the gist of the game. You move around the board, you defeat monsters, you're racing to be the first person to get to the boss and defeat him, and each version of Heroica had a different map. There's like a woods one. I think there was at least 4 total. You could play them all individually, you could join them together into one giant board, or as the game encouraged, you could just build your own settings with a few bricks and some jumper plates like this, and then play through those. So a while ago, sometime between when Heroica came out and when I started playing Dungeons & Dragons, I decided that I wanted to build my own Heroica map, and I have a few pictures of it on my Flickr. This is what I came up with. This is sort of like a whole miniature kingdom. There's like a castle and a village up on this hill, and then an evil castle on the other side of this forest. It's got height variation. There's like a dungeon and a mine underneath here. There was all sorts of things going on, and I built this whole board game with the intent of playing it like Heroica, but I didn't use any of the Heroica rules. I tried to play it almost with like Betrayal at House on the Hill stats for the little characters. It was a bad attempt at game design, and what I didn't realize at the time was that I just needed to be playing Dungeons and Dragons. This was me reaching for something that I didn't know what it was, and what it was a tabletop RPG. And so that brings us back to the present. When I run my D&D sessions, I use these. This is your standard Lego base plate that I have lined in a 4x4 grid with Sharpie. When you put a minifigure on a base plate like this, one square is 5 feet, and I build all of my maps to minifigure scale, and that's how we play. Now, I host D&D at my house, so this isn't really an issue, but maps at this scale take up a lot of table space, and they don't travel well. So if your D&D sessions move playing locations and you're trying to DM with Lego, that can be kind of a problem. But now you may be looking at Heroica behind me and thinking there might be another way. And yes, what I want to talk about today is playing D&D at Heroica scale. I have this book, it's just called the Lego Castle book, and it's full of designs of micro-scale Lego castles. There's lots of pictures and even building instructions. And building things at micro-scale makes it a lot easier to transport them and get great detail with a much smaller amount of bricks, which is also going to cost less. But micro-scale in a Lego context can mean a lot of different things. Generally, it's just smaller than minifig scale. So it can be absolutely teeny tiny scale or somewhere in between. It's not really set in stone, but what is pretty standard is Heroica. Little Heroica guys are 1x1 stud, and the spaces that they move on the board are 2x2. So if you treat that as your 5-foot square, you end up effectively building maps that are 1/2 minifig scale. And this 40-foot by 40-foot battle map becomes 80 feet by 80 feet. All you have to do is double the amount of lines you draw. The main problems that you might foresee playing at a scale like this is that these little micro figures are only available from a discontinued line of Lego board games, and they don't offer any customization. The ones that they printed are the ones that you have. But there is still a way that you can get full character customization by making these micro figures yourself, and we're going to do it the way that I did it back when I built that weird TTRPG board game. So the question is, how do we make customizable figures that are approximately the same size as these little micro figures? And the answer is we keep using standard Lego minifig heads and build a micro scale body for them using just a few bricks here. My standard method for these figures is to take the head that I want to use and attach a 1x1 clip onto the bottom. Usually I go with horizontal so they can hold their weapon up, but if you do a vertical one, then they'll be holding it forward like they're stabbing with it. Then I'm going to take a single stud, usually in a secondary color to give some variety to their wardrobe, and a 1x1 plate as the feet. Then I can attach a hair or hat, and I can take a small weapon and clip it into his hand. And now we have a little knight holding a sword, who is approximately the same size as this little guy, except just a little bit chibier looking. You can make a whole slew of characters like this. Besides the armored knight that I just showed you, I made this barbarian with a custom tiny axe with an ice skate for a blade. This orc has the jaw piece from the CMF figure that's still usable at this scale. I made a tiny mind flayer using the head from the D&D CMF series, as well as this Aarakocra and Dragonborn figures. For this evil wizard staff, I used a torch piece with a gem in the top. And for these skeletons, I use all 3 studs to kind of give them the impression of ribs, but you can build them the same way as the others if you want them to be holding weapons. We can even take some inspiration from the Minotaur from Lego Minotaurus if we want a slightly bigger figure. This Goliath that I made uses a snot brick for the center, followed by the stud and the plate with 2 clips on the side to form arms. This gives him a little bit bulkier look and makes him 2 studs taller than a standard figure, so if you're going for a slightly bigger character, you can scale them up slightly like this. And characters are one thing, but if you're running a campaign at Heroica scale, you're also going to need monsters and terrain. So I wanted to show off an assortment of micro scale monsters and a couple of terrain pieces that I built just to give you the sense of what you can do at this scale. Starting off with this tiny horse. I wanted a mount for my little knight figure, so I built this horse using a 1x3 slope and some studs for hooves. His head is this arch, and for his tail, he has a feather piece attached to a clip. My knight can ride on his back, and he's not the most detailed horse in the world, but it gets the point across, and more importantly, working on the horse gave me a much better idea, and that is a tiny centaur. That's right, I made a tiny centaur. I really love the tiny centaur. I don't know why I love it so much, but I just kind of combined half of one of the figures with the bottom half of the horse, and it made a centaur, as one would expect. I've also got this griffin. This is made with just some snot bricks here. These ring clips form the back legs, and these teeth the wings. This is a great little griffin that at minifig scale is about the size of a griffin cub or chick, whatever it is you call a baby griffin, but at this scale, it's a full-blown monster. It's also worth noting that at Heroica scale, a regular sized minifigure becomes a giant. So if you're running a campaign with lots of giants in it, this is a very easy way to do that. Suddenly this regular minifig is 10+ feet tall. And the same goes for a lot of these smaller pre-molded Lego creatures. This dog, for example, becomes a dire wolf at this scale. This little snake could be a giant constrictor. Your spider and scorpion are now giant spiders and scorpions compared to this guy. And this little Ninjago dragon is probably about the size one might expect of a young dragon. Now let's focus in on some of the more complicated creatures that I put together. We'll be using this orc for scale. The simplest one here is this gelatinous cube. It's just a translucent 2x2 brick with some tiles on top and some plates on the bottom to square it off. This beholder is built using one of these rounded snot pieces with an eyeball on the front, and this Medusa head piece forms the eye stalks. This drider I built using one of these older style Lego spiders that has the clip on the front, which I attached to this stud with a bar sticking out, and then I used a Technic half pin to reverse the connection here so that I could attach the head upright even though the clip is connected upside down. This adult dragon is a build that I've already made on the channel. I'll link it up in the cards as a black dragon wormling, but at this scale he's the size of an adult. For this treant, I'm using just a Lego minifigure with the tree torso piece that I just connected a bunch of leaves to give it a canopy. I also attempted a Lego owlbear. He's not my favorite of the designs, but he's based on the griffin that I showed off earlier. We've got snot bricks here and here to attach these back legs, and then I used these clips and some teeth to make the front legs look like they have feathers. And then for the owlish face, I used this roller skate to form eyes and this hooked cow horn to form the beak. I think he turned out about as good as I could expect at this scale. This aboleth I built using one of these minifig stud launcher pieces, and for the eyes, I removed the trigger piece and I just slid these cherries into the gap. I then connected these two ring clips with 1x2s that have hollow studs so that I could attach these wavy horns as the tentacles, and I clipped on a robot arm here at the bottom so that I could attach it to a watery base and make a mini aboleth. And then of course there's probably my favorite out of this set, the purple worm. This guy is wild because I was really working with what I had for purple, which wasn't a lot. I was able to scrounge together a few of these cylinder pieces and a few cheese slopes, and I had to figure out how I was going to make that into a worm. So what I did was take one of these whip pieces and thread it through the inside of the cylinders. You can see it going down through the middle there. The base is attached to these two plates here, and then the tip I just pushed as far as I could get into the head. These fangs are just friction fit into the bottom here and they stay put. And then I added these spines along the back, and for the base I made it look like he was busting up out of the ground. But as you can see, all of these creatures come together with only a handful of pieces. And now that we've got our monsters taken care of, let's take a look at some terrain. Microscale trees are super easy to put together. You can just use these bar pieces as trunks. I have here a variety of different kinds. These little pine trees are just a stack of grass stems, and I used this stud with a bar into the top of a cone to reverse the direction of the stud so that I could place them on the ground. There's also this style of pine tree using these fern pieces that Lego has been using a lot in sets like the Viking Village. This makes a good sized pine tree at this scale too. This tree I made by just stacking two snot bricks on top of each other that are connected to this bar, and then I piled a bunch of leaves on at various angles to build up some brush at the top. Alternately, for this tree here, I took a handful of these leaf pieces and then attached these brighter green ones onto the ends, and then I just stacked them onto this bar by sliding it through one of the open holes until I had a tree building up, and then I just stuck an extra bright green leaf on the top, which gave us a nice tree shape there. And then this one is kind of a combination combination of those last two methods, I used a snot brick to connect several of the green leaves together, and then used the bright green leaves to fill in some of the space and add some variety. This is also the perfect scale to use these pre-molded bristle brush trees if you have any of them. I've always found that these are kind of awkwardly short at minifig scale, but compared to a micro scale figure, they're a totally reasonable tree size. It's also very easy to create castle towers at this scale if you have some of these corner panels. I just stacked 8 of them together to build this tower using this crenellation piece from the classic castle era, and stuck a door on the front. These arched window pieces make the perfect doors and door frames at this scale, so I use that again here to make this little water wheel mill building. For the water wheel itself, I'm using a ship's steering wheel with a bunch of headlight pieces on it, and the top and bottom floors are basically just boxes of bricks. There's really not a lot going on here, but it ends up looking extra detailed because it's so small scale. I even built a 2-masted sailing ship using a Lego rowboat. Just some bars with clips for the mast, and I even brick-built sails using these arch pieces. And finally, I thought I should put together a little dungeon scene here. This demonstrates some of what I was talking about for map building. If you line your plates 2x2 instead of 4x4, you end up with this section of dungeon hallways that is smaller than just one of these plates, but gives your characters room to move, equivalent to what would be 4 or 5 of those half plates at minifigure scale. It's also a lot easier to make multi-tiered maps because you don't have to lift so much up. In the past, at minifigure scale, I've cheated my way around this by setting my plates on top of non-Lego risers like cardboard boxes that I've covered with paper. That way I don't have to fill in the entire space with Lego rockwork and spend a bunch of money on bricks that aren't accomplishing anything except verticality. Here, it just took a handful of these pre-molded rock pieces to make this 2-story pit trap. And so that is just a sampling of what you can do if you want to play D&D at Heroica scale. I know that one of the primary barriers to starting D&D using Legos is the cost of bricks and what people have available and the space that it's going to take up on your table. So while this method may not be for everyone, I think it is a great alternative option to minifig scale. You can get a lot done with a lot fewer bricks. It's smaller, cheaper, and more portable, while still giving you a lot of customization options. You also don't have to pick one or the other. You can mix these scales together depending on the circumstances of your setting. If your DM is traveling, maybe you play at smaller scale that session, and when you're at their house and they have access to their full collection, you play at minifigure scale. Or you can play your campaign at small scale and zoom into minifigure scale for big important battles like boss fights, which will give them an extra sense of awesomeness because, oh, we're breaking out the big maps for this one, and that'll get your players even extra excited. You could also mix and match in the same session. If you're going on a massive dungeon crawl, it can become impractical to lay out dungeon maps across your whole table and still have room for everybody's stuff. But what you can do is build micro-scale dungeon hallways for your characters to explore through. Then they can get the sense of the layout of the dungeon, and when they go into a room with an encounter, you can do a cutaway map and bring in a minifig scale size map of that room, do your encounter, and then go back to the micro-scale dungeon for the larger scale exploring. You could fit an entire massive dungeon in the space of one of those cutaway dungeon rooms, and that gives you the best of both scales. So that is all I have for you today, just some food for thought and an excuse for me to finally buy that Heroica board game on eBay. But let me know in the comments down below what you think about Lego Heroica scale. Is it something you would consider using? Have you used it? Are there pros or cons that I didn't think about? Be sure to like and subscribe for more Lego D&D content if you haven't already, and as always, let me know in the comments down below what D&D creatures you would like to see me build next.